What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down, take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching storyline and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about Supermen, the Men of Tomorrow. This was an 8-part storyline that was done in the middle of the New 52. It was written by Geoff Johns. Matter of fact, this was the only storyline that Geoff did for Superman in the New 52. But also, this is the first appearance of 2 new characters. One of them being, of course, Mr. Oz, and the other one being Ulysses as well. And so this is technically a very huge moment when it comes to, well, Superman comics. Because, again, this brings in Mr. Oz, who was a very important character when it came to the early days of DC Rebirth. But with that being said, I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video. Later, guys. Okay, so I want to cover Superman, the Men of Tomorrow. This was a very interesting storyline because it takes place in the middle of the New 52. Matter of fact, it was written by Geoff Johns. It takes place after Krypton returns, but takes place before good old Truth arc storyline that we had just wrapped up and covered. Now, when it comes to the Men of Tomorrow, like I said, it was written by Geoff Johns. Now, this was not his first time writing for Superman. Matter of fact, he had a lot of Superman storylines that he had written before the New 52. But this was kind of like his only Superman story he did in the New 52. And the thing was, it was kind of like the beginning of what he wanted to do in DC's Rebirth. And you see what I mean as we go through this entire series or this entire storyline, because it was 7 parts long. But the goal of this was kind of like, hey, he's trying to build something to come down the road for later Superman books. And again, you'll see what I mean as we go through this entire story. And so getting into today's storyline, we actually jump back 25 years ago. And when we do, we pick up with a research center known as Ulysses Research Center. Now, this center is actually very important for the overall storyline. Now, when it comes to the actual center, it was made as a way to bring the top scientists from across the world over here to work on different kinds of experiments. We also kind of find out they were exploring different kinds of dimensions, but that was their downfall, because when we actually jump into today's story arc, we kind of find out the entire lab has been put on lockdown. And the reason why, because one of the dimensions that they were exploring, Dimension 2, had opened up a portal, and everything in that lab was being pulled into that portal. And so with the lab being on lockdown, they're trying to contain this portal before it is able to get out into the public. Now, we do focus on 2 scientists, and these 2 scientists, they have a baby. We kind of find out they were a couple the entire time working at this center. And of course, they had a baby, and they're trying to make sure their baby survives this entire experience. And so you have the father realize there is only one way to save their son's life, by sending him away into another dimension. Dimension 4. Now, that one right there, they have not fully explored that actual dimension. But when it comes to the father of this child, he believes it's the best thing to make sure their son survives. And so they put him in a rocket and they send him through the portal that leads over to Dimension 4. Right when you see the lab explode. And so now this boy is apparently the sole survivor of this entire research center. But getting back over to the present day, we see Superman, Clark Kent, fighting against Titano. Now, when it comes to Titano, I'm not going to sit down and truly explain who the character actually is. All you need to know is that he's being used as a way to show off Superman fighting against some huge creature or character in the middle of Metropolis. But we also kind of find out that Jimmy Olsen is trying to get a picture of Superman fighting against Titano. The problem is though, while trying to get that picture, Clark is moving a tad bit too fast for Jimmy to get a good picture. And so unfortunately, Jimmy gets a horrible picture of Superman fighting against Titano. But then we jump over to the Daily Planet. Now when we do, we pick up with Jimmy Olsen trying his best to sell that photo over to Perry White, of course, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet. Now when it comes to Perry, he's very confused about the idea of why Jimmy is even working there. And the reason why, because around this point in the New 52, Jimmy's parents had disappeared and they left him a whole lot of money. I'm talking about millions of dollars. And so homeboy should not be working at all. He should be at home trying to do something new with his new money. But either way, he wants to work. And the reason why? Because his parents' money are basically dirty money. And so he's kind of like, listen, that money right there was my parents, and really only got that money on accident. But either way, you have Perry tell Jimmy, your photo is not that great. Your photo technically sucks. But hey, you know what? I'll take it, give you some money, now leave. Now that is the moment where you have Clark Kent arrive at the Daily Planet. Now this is Perry trying to bring Clark back to the Daily Planet. Now remember, this takes place before the actual Superman Truth arc, like literally right before that arc right there. So Perry has no idea that Clark Kent is Superman, but this is Clark trying to, not him really, it's Perry more of trying to bring Clark back to the Daily Planet. Because in the earlier parts of the New 52, you had Clark leave the planet because of Morgan Edge, the person who actually owns the company. But it's Perry saying, listen, Morgan Edge is Morgan Edge, but I need someone like you back here at the actual Daily Planet because you were a great reporter. You knew how to get the right stories. And currently right now, a lot of things are happening across the world. And this takes place right after Forever Evil, where you had Lex Luthor and a group of bad guys being the ones to take down the crime syndicate to save the earth. And so for Perry, he's kind of like, I need someone like you to kind of help me make sense of this new world that we are currently living in. Now, once you have Clark go home and try to relax, that is the moment where he hears someone calling out for help. And we kind of find out in the middle of Metropolis, some kind of crazy events are happening where you have this sinkhole appear in the middle of Metropolis, but also you have this random spacecraft appear as well. And so you have Clark become Superman and trying his best to save all the different lives who are being affected by this actual incident. Now, while trying to do that, well, something else or somebody else hits Clark from behind and he gets sent flying. And that is the moment where we get a look at Mr. Oz. And matter of fact, this was the first appearance of Mr. Oz in DC Comics. Now we already know who it is. It's Jor-El. But at this point right here in the New 52 and really in Superman comics, you had a lot of people wonder who in the world was this character. And matter of fact, we didn't see him again for a very long time. I want to say until DC Rebirth. Either way though, when it comes to Mr. Oz, he does speak in a way that he actually knows Superman, which makes sense because it's Jor-El. But he does tell Clark, get back up. I raised you to be somebody who never gets knocked down and stays down. But then you have Clark begin to fight against some kind of alien creature. Now, when the alien speaks, Clark has no idea what the alien is actually saying. Now, here's the thing though, guys, because when it comes to Superman, he does know a little bit of different languages from different planets across the universe. He does not know every single language. And so for Clark, it's kind of like, okay, you could be an alien from a planet I have never heard of, and so of course I have no idea what you are saying. But Clark is having a hard time actually take down this particular alien. And so while you have our hero trying his best to take down the alien, instead he is getting his butt kicked. Now luckily for him, another person does appear, where it seems like this guy right here has very similar powers to Superman. It seems to be another Superman-like character, and with his help, Clark was able to take down the alien creature. But now Clark is wondering, who is this other person, this long-haired blonde dude who just saved my life but has powers very similar to mine? But when it comes to our long-haired blonde character, he's wondering where in the world he is at. Now Clark tells him, you are in Metropolis, you are in America. But for our young character right here, he cannot believe that he is in America right now, because he was told the Earth was technically destroyed by one of his enemies. And we kind of find out this is the baby we saw at the very beginning of this video that was sent away to Dimension 4. But with that being said, with him being here, he's wondering, oh my God, am I really back in America? Am I back on Earth right now? Because I was told that my home world was destroyed, that I was the sole survivor. But now I'm going to find out that is not technically true, that I'm actually, not the sole survivor. And so he tells Clark, my name is Ulysses, and I'm happy to say I am not alone. Now, as we get into the second chapter, we pick up with Perry White getting very angry about the idea that the Daily Planet was not the first newspaper company to publish a story and also get a good picture of Superman working alongside with Ulysses. And so with that happening, you have Perry getting very upset about the idea all his reporters and also photographer Jimmy not doing their jobs or not being better at their jobs. And so homeboy is just yelling at the top of his lungs and be all like, y'all better get out of there. I don't care what part of the paper you work on. I don't care you do sports. I don't care you do like dog photos. I don't care what you do. Everybody is going to work on this particular story right here. I want to know who is our new Superman, but on top of that, is there some kind of relation between the two of them? And so you have all the reporters leave, but that's when you have Clark walk in. And we come to find out that Clark wants to know about the actual Ulysses Research Center from 25 years ago. And the reason why, because Perry White wrote an article about the actual incident 25 years ago. And so this is Clark asking Perry, does he remember anything about the actual incident? Now, with that being said, Perry does tell us some things we already knew from the earlier parts of this story, but we do get some new information. And we kind of find out that yes, these were the top scientists who all left and went over to the actual center to begin to work on different kinds of experiments. Except we kind of find out every single scientist was working for a military group in different countries around the world and making weapons of mass destruction. And so every single scientist got tired of the idea of making weapons that could hurt other people. And so that was the main reason why all of them left their jobs and came over to that research center. But on top of that, they were trying to find a better home for themselves. And that led into them looking into other dimensions. But the problem was Dimension 2. An unknown energy source came out of the portal that led into Dimension 2 that basically had to force a shutdown on the actual research center to make sure that actual energy did not get outside of the actual center. And when it comes to Perry, he said, listen, when I last heard, there were no survivors at all. Everyone died in that particular incident. And so then you have Clark pull out a photo of a couple that was holding a baby. And of course, it's the same two folks we saw at the very beginning of this video. It is Ulysses' parents. But it's Perry White saying, yeah, I heard about this couple, but that is technically it. But then that is the moment you have Clark and Perry get interrupted by something else happening in the Daily Bugle, or Planet, sorry. We come to find out it is Ulysses who had arrived at the Daily Planet. Now, when he does arrive at the Daily Planet, he's looking for Clark Kent because he knows that Clark is Superman. But here's the thing though, guys, like I said earlier, this takes place before the Superman Truth arc. And so the entire world still has no idea that Clark Kent is Superman. But on top of that though, it's Ulysses right now about to ruin that for Clark just being here and looking at Clark like, hey man, I have been looking for you. And so Clark had to make us some kind of cover story to make sure no one finds out that he is Superman by telling everyone, oh, by the way, I was able to score an interview with Ulysses. And you have Perry say, you better give us one heck of an article, one heck of a piece for the next paper for tomorrow. So get in there and get that interview now. But you have other reporters like Lois Lane kind of wondering how in the world was Clark Kent able to pull an interview with the new man of tomorrow, Ulysses. But you have Clark take Ulysses over to his apartment. And really, this is more of Clark trying to figure out which parts of Ulysses' stories is actually false and which parts is actually true. Because for Clark, he does not believe in the idea that Ulysses was sent into another dimension 25 years ago to only come back 25 years later. And the thing is, we saw earlier, he was sent away into that other dimension. Now, at first, you could say that both characters do have a lot in common. They both were sent away to another world, but also believing they were the sole survivor of their home world that was destroyed. Because for Clark, he believed that he was the sole survivor until Supergirl and Zod and some other characters as well. But for Ulysses, comes to find out the Earth was never destroyed. And so this is huge for him. Now, the only reason why he believed that because he has a bad guy in his new world known as, and I'm going to butcher his name, which is Cleric. And when it comes to Cleric, he told Ulysses that he had destroyed the Earth. But in reality, that was a lie. Now for Clark, he's wondering, okay, where is this Cleric person? And you have Ulysses tell Clark, oh, he's currently locked up. But the thing is, he's getting healed up. And sooner or later, he'll come back and try to attack me and most likely you as well. And this time try to actually destroy the Earth. Now for Clark, he still does not believe in what story that he's being fed. But he said, you know what? Stay here in my apartment. I'm going to do more research to see if what you are telling me is the actual truth. And so you have Clark head over to where the Ulysses Research Center was actually at. Now, when he does arrive, of course, he does go inside. And when he goes inside, he's trying his best to find any kind of clues that kind of help him get a better idea of what exactly happened 25 years ago. But apparently he does find something. But before we are able to learn what he found, he calls up Perry White in the story, switches back over to Ulysses. But when we do jump over to Ulysses, we currently see him thinking about the idea of exploring Metropolis. Now, even though Clark told him to stay there in the apartment, it's really more of Ulysses saying, you know what, this is my home world. I have not been here in 25 years. I want to actually explore Earth. And so he does grab some clothes of Clark Kent, change into Clark's clothes, and then goes into Metropolis to explore the actual city. Now, he does get a hot dog, and unfortunately, he has no idea that you have to pay for certain things, really, most things. But then, right after that, there is a huge explosion. And out of nowhere, you have a bunch of robot soldiers appear and they begin to blow up Metropolis left and right. Now, of course, you do have Ulysses step in, but the question is right now, where did these robot soldiers come from? And so you have Ulysses be the hero that he wants to be, because right off the bat, he begins the process of taking down all these different robot soldiers. Now, while doing that, we kind of learn that he has not learned or gained the skill of damage control, because Homeboy is ripping through Metropolis to just go ahead and defeat these toy robots. Now that is the moment where you have Superman come back to Metropolis and see what Ulysses has done. Now he is technically upset with Ulysses for not staying in the apartment like he told him to do, but at the same time it's kind of like, well, okay, Metropolis was in danger and you had to step in. Now, when it comes to Clark, he realized that these robot soldiers have very similar tech to Titano, the big huge gorilla we saw in the last chapter. And so it's Clark saying, okay, you know what? I have something else to research besides you, but you and I have to go somewhere else. And so you have Clark take Ulysses over to a random couple's house. And of course, you already know what is about to happen next, because we kind of find out Ulysses' parents did not die 25 years ago. That matter of fact, after they were able to send their son away, hopefully somewhere safe, they were actually able to contain the portal that led into Dimension 2. And once they were able to contain that, then the center actually shut down. But on top of that, when it comes to Ulysses' parents, they survived. They went ahead and moved into a house by themselves, but hoping that one day they will be able to see their son once again. And so of course, Clark was able to find them and say, hey, I found your son. He came back to Earth 25 years later. Here's your son, Ulysses. But getting into the third chapter, we do pick up with Mr. Oz. Now when we do, it is him currently thinking about the idea of releasing something or someone to go after Superman. Now again, we have no idea why just yet, but you do have Mr. Oz remind us about the whole life of Clark Kent, the things he went through, the idea that he was sent away from his home world. He was originally the sole survivor of his home world. He lost his parents, both sets of parents. And the thing is, Clark never did give up hope. But either way, it's Mr. Oz thinking, okay, should I release you or not? But getting back over to Superman, Ulysses, and Ulysses' parents, we do learn a tad bit more about them, but at the same time, we kind of get a reminder of their actual origin. And what I mean by that is, remember earlier, we had learned that all the scientists who came to that research center were scientists from across the world who were working for different military groups. When it comes to Ulysses' parents, they were working for the American military. But the thing is, they got tired of the idea of building weapons of mass destruction. But also they were confronted by somebody known as Margaret Knight. Now when it comes to Dr. Margaret Knight, she told the parents of Ulysses that their weapons are causing mass destruction, but she had an idea for all scientists to go to a new world, a new dimension, which of course led to the birth of the actual research center. But like we saw 25 years ago, thanks to that portal that led to Dimension 2, of course, the entire center was completely wrecked. But the thing is, when it comes to the parents of Ulysses, they were the sole survivors of the incident. Because right after they had sent their son away to Dimension 4, they found a way to actually shut down the portal that led into Dimension 2. The problem is though, once they did that, of course, everybody else died in the research center except them, but also their child was already sent away to Dimension 4. And unfortunately, all the work they done to hopefully figure out how to travel to Dimension 4 was all gone, of course, as well. And so with that happening, they had no way to get their son back over to their, well, the Earth dimension. And so they're kind of like, we just prayed for a miracle that one day you'll be able to come back to us, and here you are 25 years later. But the question is right now, what happened to Ulysses over there in Dimension 4? And so once Ulysses had arrived 25 years ago in Dimension 4, he was found by two loving parents. They took him in and began to raise him. Now, his adoptive father was also a doctor, and he was able to realize that when Ulysses had traveled through dimensions, he had absorbed the energy of Dimension 4 and infused with his cells. And so with that happening, of course, Ulysses had gained powers when he arrived in Dimension 4, super strength, super speed, and also being able to release a huge amount of energy. Now, you also have Ulysses tell us that in Dimension 4, there was world peace across the board. Like, there was literally no trouble at all, except every once in a while because a being known as Cleric would appear. Now, Cleric was not from Dimension 4. He came from one of the 5 great dimensions. But when he would arrive, he would cause a lot of trouble. And usually Ulysses would use his powers as a way to protect Dimension 4 from him. Now, when it came to their last battle, Ulysses had killed the brother of Cleric. And when that happened, Cleric said that he'll get revenge against Ulysses and find his home world, of course, talking about Earth. And so that is why earlier when Ulysses arrived on Earth, he believed the Earth was basically destroyed, to only find out it was not destroyed. It is actually alive and well. And so now the question is, will he go back to Dimension 4? Because now he realized he can have a life here with his parents, his biological parents. And so you have Ulysses tell his parents, no, I'm not going to go back to Dimension 4. Why would I? Because the thing is, Dimension 4 has complete peace across the board. And when it comes to Cleric, he's here on Earth locked up. Because remember, earlier we saw Superman fight against some kind of creature. That was Cleric. And so we saw Superman and Ulysses being able to defeat Cleric. And he is currently locked up, which means the home world, not his home world, sorry, Dimension 4 is technically at peace. The only time it was not at peace when Cleric arrived and began to attack that dimension. But now with him being locked up, it'll have peace forever. There's no point for him to go back. Now, his adoptive parents had also died, just like Clark's adoptive parents had died. And so for Ulysses, he's kind of like, I really don't have anybody back there to go to. So yeah, I'm going to stay here on Earth. Now, you also have Clark tell the parents of Ulysses that he has somebody who can kind of help give Ulysses a life here on Earth. You know, kind of build up a paper trail to say that he was always on Earth. He never did disappear. They always had a son. It's just you guys never noticed. And so it's him beginning the process of having a new chance to live a life on Earth. And so you have Clark go back home to get some sleep. Unfortunately, when he does go back home, well, that is the moment where he is confronted by Ulysses. And we see Ulysses kind of amazed about the idea that Clark is trying to get some sleep. And the reason why, because when it comes to Ulysses, when he traveled to Dimension 4 25 years ago, and absorbed the energy of Dimension 4, it gave him enough fuel to kind of keep him awake, to never be tired. And he's very amazed that Clark is not tired, because Clark is technically a solar battery with the yellow sun constantly feeding him solar energy. But the thing is, Clark says, yeah, you're right. I could possibly go on without sleep for a few days, but the thing is though, I want to be able to dream. That's the thing, because dreams are very important for almost anybody, because dreams are what motivate us to achieve certain goals in our lives. Either way, you then have Ulysses show Clark a piece of one of the robot soldiers from earlier, and you have Ulysses say, listen, when it comes to any kind of beings or even robots, they all use some kind of energy, and I am able to follow their energy trail when they are releasing that energy wherever they go. And so he tells Clark, when you flew away to the Daily Planet earlier, you released a certain kind of energy that I was able to follow. And so when it comes to these robots, yes, they're robots, but they also use energy as well. They leave a trail behind that I'm able to find and follow. And so it is Ulysses saying, I think I know where these robots are coming from. If we work together, we could technically stop the bad guy behind this. And so once you have Clark and Ulysses being able to follow the trail over to a scrapyard, and you have Clark explain what a scrapyard is to Ulysses, they both realize there is a base underneath the yard, but unfortunately Clark cannot look inside of it because his X-ray vision cannot go through lead. The entire base is covered in lead, but you have Clark try to use his heat vision to open an opening so they'll be able to go inside the actual base. But the problem is though, his heat vision is not working properly. Matter of fact, it gets to the point where his heat vision begins to go crazy and he has to stop using it. But you have Ulysses realize it could be him for the reason why Clark's heat vision is not working properly, because one of the many powers that Ulysses has is to be able to manipulate different kinds of energies. And so of course with heat vision being a kind of energy, it's most likely going crazy because of Ulysses. Either way, you do have our two characters go inside the actual base. Now, once our heroes do go inside the actual base, you have our heroes begin to look around and try to find any kind of clues to figure out what in the world is going on here. Except that is the moment you have Ulysses begin to attack Clark Kent. And the only reason why, because some kind of device had basically embedded itself inside the head of Ulysses and began to control him. Now, once Clark was able to realize what in the world is going on with his new friend, and being able to take down his new friend and get rid of the device that was controlling his friend, well, that is the moment where he is confronted by the Machinist. Now, the Machinist is a new character introduced in this particular storyline, but he was the one who had created the robot soldiers from earlier, but also the one who also created Titano, who made Titano attack Metropolis earlier as well. This is our main bad guy for this particular story. Now, when it comes to our new villain, the Machinist, he does tell Superman why he's doing what he is doing, by saying that if he is able to prove that his machines, that his creations are able to go against Superman for at least 5 minutes, possibly 10, he can then sell his machine to the highest bidder, because people want to buy his tech if his tech is able to go toe to toe with Superman. Now, when it comes to Clark, his whole idea is to shut everything down here and now. And matter of fact, you also have Ulysses get back up and want to shut everything down as well too. But the difference is that Ulysses is full of rage because he hates the idea that he was mind controlled. And because he was mind controlled, he's kind of like, you have to die. And so you have Ulysses kill off the Machinist just like that by using his heat vision and literally blowing a hole right through the Machinist's chest. Is kind of like, okay, so our new hero is technically a cold blood killer, except you have the Machinist say, no, I'm still here. You just killed an innocent man. And we kind of find out the Machinist was never here. He was controlling somebody, but speaking through a speaker that was placed on the neck of the person that he was using. And so it was the Machinist just saying, the only reason why I did this because I knew, one, you guys would try to capture me. Two, it now gives me more information about you guys. And three, now I know my tech is able to go toe to toe with you guys for at least 5 minutes. But on top of that, number 4, you killed off an innocent man. Now, as we jump into the 4th chapter, you have Clark tell us, the readers, but also Ulysses, that technically he is an innocent man. That the guy that he believed that he had just killed was already dead. And the reason why Clark knows this is because the same kind of tech that was used on Ulysses earlier to control his body was being used on this innocent man as well. And so when it comes to our new villain, the Machinist, he was just using this innocent man's dead body as a way to trick Superman and also Ulysses. And so once you have Clark tell Ulysses that, he also tells Ulysses, listen dude, no matter what happens, you always have to find a different way. Killing is a huge no-no. Now for Ulysses, he's kind of like, no, Clark, you were about to die. You were about to get murdered. But for Clark, it's kind of like, it doesn't matter. You always have to find a different way, because what you just did right there is the complete wrong way. But I'm going to give you a second chance. And so that is when you have Clark pull out another piece of technology that belongs to the Machinist. And it's Clark saying, you have the ability to follow energy trails. This time, follow this trail so that we be able to hopefully find our new bad guy here. And so with that ability, you have Clark and also Ulysses being able to locate the real Machinist. Now, when they are able to locate him, he is currently out in the middle of the ocean trying to fight through one heck of a storm. But the reason why? To meet up with one of his clients who plans to buy a lot of his tech for a huge amount of money. But the thing is, like I said, Clark and Ulysses was able to find him with Ulysses' power being able to follow different kinds of energy trails. And so once they do locate him, we do get a few pages of our heroes trying to stop his boat, but to also fight against his army of bird robots who are trying to protect him. But once they are able to kind of defeat all the different robots, that is the moment they get the chance to grab the Machinist and to hopefully learn everything about him. But unfortunately, they're not going to right off the bat. But while our heroes were working together, you have Mr. Oz once again watching Clark Kent. He's not watching Ulysses, he's watching Clark Kent. Now, back when the New 52 was happening and we had this book, it kind of made a lot of fans wonder who was Mr. Oz. But now we know it is Jor-El. It makes a lot of sense of why he's watching Clark so closely. But once our heroes are able to get their hands on the Machinist, you then have our heroes say their next goal is to figure out who are the different clients that he has across the world. And so luckily for Superman, when it comes to Ulysses, he has the ability to follow different kinds of energy trails. And so it's him saying, I will basically trace all the different trails of people that you had contact with to figure out who are your different clients across the world. But the problem is, though, when it comes to the Machinist, he has built so many machines for different people across the world. Once you have Ulysses begins the process of trying to pick up all the different kinds of energy trails, he realized there are a bunch of weapons across the world. And this is going to be a huge moment for Ulysses, because remember, he was sent away 25 years ago to a world that had complete peace, to only come back to Earth because he found out that Earth was never destroyed. But now he is learning everything about the Earth, especially the idea that Earth has wars going on across the board. And so it's him realizing that the Earth is technically in trouble. And when it comes to people like the Machinist, well, he's out there supplying the different people who are involved in wars across the world. And so it's Clark saying, yes, this is our world, but it's up to us and other heroes to lead the world into a better direction where there is no war, where there's peace across the entire planet. And once you have Clark tell Ulysses that, he kind of realized, okay, we have a lot of work to do. But you didn't have Ulysses leave. And when he does leave, is Clark wondering where in the world is he going now? Now, with that being said, you have the Machinist talk to Clark a tad bit more. And he says, it's crazy that you think that possibly down the road, the world will be better off with machines and weapons. And you don't realize that machines and weapons, technically war, is part of the human culture. No matter what you do, war will always be around. And so when it comes to stopping me, unfortunately, you'll never be able to stop me at all. And you have the Machinist tell Clark that he was sent here by Mr. Oz. Of course, we already know that is Jor-El. But the thing is, Clark has no idea who Mr. Oz is. He has no idea that his father, Jor-El, is still alive. Either way, you have the Machinist blow up the boat they were on and being able to get away. And so you have Ulysses fly over to different parts of the world. Now, when he does, this begins the idea of him realizing what the world is truly like. He's realizing that there's war everywhere across the world. That war's been going on for a very long time on the planet Earth. But the thing is, he would have known that because he was gone for 25 years in another dimension to only come back and find out that your home world is plagued with wars left and right. And so it's kind of him realizing that he has to do something to make a change for the entire Earth. Now, after a couple hours or possibly the next day, you have Superman looking everywhere for Ulysses, but unfortunately, he could not find him anywhere at all. And so with that being said, you have Superman call up Ulysses' parents, where of course they also tell him they have no idea where he is at. But then, out of nowhere, you have someone playing a broadcast across everybody's television, everybody's cell phones. And that's when we kind of find out it is Ulysses making an offer to the entire world, where he says that when he left this world 25 years ago because of his parents, he arrived in a dimension where there was peace across the entire planet. There was no war at all. But when he came back here to Earth, he thought he would have the ability to blend in perfectly with the rest of the humans, but to also kind of learn how the way the Earth works. But only being here for a couple of days, he already learned the Earth is not a place for him, nor for other people who are like him. And what he means by that, people who hate war, people who want to have a better life, people who are out there starving, people who want to see peace across the board. And so this is Ulysses saying, I have the ability to take you guys to a better world, a better dimension. And so it's him saying, why not go ahead and come back with me to dimension 4, where in that dimension, there's peace across the board. And this is Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over Supermen, the Men of Tomorrow. This was an 8-part storyline that was done in the middle of the New 52, and it was written by Geoff Johns. Now, of course, this was not Geoff Johns' first story when it comes to writing Superman, but it was his first story for Superman in the New 52 era. Now, with that being said, when it comes to the Men of Tomorrow, it's all about the idea that Superman met a new character known as Ulysses, who comes from Dimension 4, but he is very similar to Superman in a way. What I mean by that is 25 years ago, Ulysses was sent away from Earth into another dimension by his parents. Now remember, when it came to Ulysses' parents, they were scientists, and like other scientists across the world who were all working for different military groups around the world, they all got tired of making different kinds of weapons of mass destruction. And so they all came together and basically went over to a research center known as Ulysses Research Center, where they were trying to find a dimension to be their new home, hopefully a better place than Earth. The problem was, though, they opened up a portal to Dimension 2, and when they did that, some kind of energy source was basically killing off the different scientists in that building. And so to save their son, they sent their son away over to Dimension 4. Now, he was sent away, but he came back 25 years later. And when he came back 25 years later, he realized the Earth is a horrible place because he believed that he was the sole survivor. And when he found out the Earth was still alive, he felt happy, excited about the idea that he now has a chance to learn more about his home world. But unfortunately, as he traveled across the world, he realized that war is a huge problem across the board, but there are also other problems as well. And so after realizing the earth is not a great place, he made an offer to the entire world. He says, listen, if you are tired of living on this horrible planet, come with me to my adoptive world, Dimension 4. Now remember, in Dimension 4, there was just peace all over the entire dimension. There was no war. They had some trouble, but that trouble only came every once in a while. But Ulysses was able to deal with those problems as soon as they popped up. And so he's saying, if you guys are tired of being here, come with me. I'll take you back to a better place, a better world, Dimension 4. And that was where we left off at the end of the last chapter. And so you have Superman go and confront Ulysses. Now, when he does, he asks Ulysses, what are you doing, dude? Because here you are trying to take away not thousands, but more of like millions or billions of people away from the earth. You can't do that. Now for Ulysses, it's more of like, dude, I'm not taking anyone away from the earth. I gave them an offering. It was literally their choice. They have the right to decide what they want to do. They can stay here and be on this horrible planet, or go to a world where there is peace across the world. Now for Superman, it's more about the idea of like, listen, you and I have the ability to install hope into this world, to have people believe in us, but to also believe in the idea that sooner or later a better world is gonna come. Now this is not Clark saying that he believes in that a perfect world is going to come. It's him saying that their goal is to build a better world, because no matter what, there is never going to be a perfect world, because nobody can ever be perfect across the board. And so it's Clark saying, what you're doing right now is basically saying that you give up on Earth right off the bat. Now for Ulysses, it's more of like, well, yeah, I was gone for 25 years. Clark, 25 years have passed by and the earth has not improved that much. It's still a complete failure 25 years later. But you have Clark say, but some parts did improve. That's the thing. The earth is constantly going to change. And the thing is, we have to use our powers to make sure those changes are actually good, but not bad. But the thing is, Ulysses does not care. It's all about the idea that this earth is technically a failure. And the thing is, this guy comes from Dimension 4. He spent 25 years there. In that dimension, it was a perfect world, a perfect society. And with this offering being out there, of course, you have the public of all these different areas across the world just running to the locations that Ulysses says, go to if you want to come with me over to Dimension 4. Now, Lois Lane and Jimmy, they're going to one of the locations to get a better look at devices that Ulysses is using. But his parents, they're also down with the idea of leaving the Earth to go with their son over to Dimension 4. And matter of fact, that was their goal. They were looking for a better world than Earth. They hated the idea of building weapons of mass destruction. And so they tell Superman what their son is doing is technically not wrong. That in reality, he's bringing hope into the world. That was our goal 25 years ago. And here's our son being able to take our goal and actually accomplish that goal. But then we get our chance to look at the public. How will the public react? How will they act with the idea of this offering being out there? And you have all these different people just running to different locations that Ulysses says to go to if you want to come with him over to Dimension 4. And so with that offering, you have folks fighting their way to be next in line to go to a perfect world, a perfect world that has peace across the board, that no matter what, you won't be homeless, you won't starve to death, there's no war at all. And so you have folks just pushing and shoving. But here's the thing though, because it's Ulysses causing another problem across the world. Because when it comes to the human race, the hunger for war is always going to be there. And so now you have folks fighting against each other over the idea to just be next in line for a possibility to have a better life. But the thing is, he's not there watching that. But then you have Ulysses pay a visit over to Cleric. Now remember, Cleric was technically Ulysses' main and only bad guy. Well, not his only bad guy, but his main bad guy over in Dimension 4. Either way, when it came to our two characters coming over to the Earth dimension, Superman and Ulysses worked together to take him down. And he was locked up on Stryker Island. And so this is Ulysses paying a visit over to Cleric to ask him a question or to just talk to him about something. Unfortunately, we have no idea what they had discussed because they're speaking in another language, the language of Dimension 4. But apparently, as soon as the conversation ended, Ulysses seemed very angry about what they had talked about. But then you have Ulysses head over to his parents' house, his biological parents. And of course, they're very happy to see their son, but also kind of like, all right, man, we are ready to go over to Dimension 4. When do we leave? And you have Ulysses tell his parents, you guys can't go. And it's kind of like, wait, what do you mean? Why in the world can we not go? But the thing is, he does not really answer their question very well. The only thing he says is that I did not know you were still alive. They did not tell me you were still alive. I'm trying to protect you. And that line right there is very concerning to the point where you have Superman walk into the room. And he's kind of like, Ulysses, what in the world is going on? What are you not telling us? But what are you not telling your parents especially? And right off the bat, you have Ulysses attack Superman. Now, here's the thing, because you have Ulysses begin to say different things that kind of hint that he's not technically a good guy that we were left to believe he was. But on top of that, he does say different things in a way that there never was a perfect world that he went to 25 years ago in Dimension 4. And the reason why I'm saying that, because you have the man beating down on Superman. And he says, this is not my first time doing this. And that right there should be the first red flag. But wait, there's more. Because then you have Ulysses continue to beat down on Superman. And when he does, he tells Clark this right here. You are wrong. A perfect world can happen, except it cannot happen overnight. It comes with a cost. And unfortunately, to make sure the Earth can have the chance to be that perfect world, I'm going to have to make sure it does pay the cost to achieve that goal. And so to achieve that goal, to pay for that cost, it has to be your life, Superman. And so you have Ulysses continue to beat down on Clark to the point where we're led to believe that Clark Kent is actually dead. And so as we dive into the 5th chapter, we do pick up with Superman waking up after being beat down by, of course, Ulysses. And of course, when he does wake up, he realizes that he is unable to break out of the machine that he is currently trapped inside of. And we kind of find out the machine is basically releasing a similar energy to kryptonite. And so even though it's not kryptonite, it has the same effects as kryptonite as a way to weaken Superman, to hurt Superman, so that he will not be able to break free. But that is the moment where you have Cleric walk in. Now, when Cleric walks in, this is a huge moment. And the reason why? Because it's Superman realizing that he has been played. Because Cleric is the adoptive father of Ulysses. Because remember, 25 years ago, he was sent over to Dimension 4. And he told us in our last video that he had great parents and his father was a doctor and everything was beautiful over in Dimension 4. But his adoptive father is Cleric. And he told us that Cleric was his main bad guy in Dimension 4. And that was not the truth. And so now you have Clark realize, oh my God, I've been played. Because now Clark realizing, wait a second, when you first arrived alongside with Cleric and you helped me fight against him, that was a trick. You basically used that moment right there as a way to breaking our defense down, to build a trust between us and you, so that the rest of the people of Earth can start believing in you like they do with me. But in reality, you were not here to actually help us. You were here to weaken us to the point where we'll go do anything you want us to do. And so when it comes to the thousands or millions of people who had agreed to go with Ulysses over to Dimension 4, it was all part of his plan for something bigger. But we're not told what that big plan truly is. And matter of fact, it seems like these 6 million people are going to die for some kind of crazy plan of Ulysses. And so you have Ulysses say, listen, y'all be okay because the Earth has 6 billion people. The Earth will be okay without 6 million people. But on top of that, I have to do this as a way to save Dimension 4. But even though I'm from this planet, I realize that this world is a failure. And so what's the point with me going ahead and using 6 million people to achieve a certain goal? But you didn't have Ulysses go ahead and say, it's time for us to all go over to Dimension 4. Now, when they do arrive over to Dimension 4, this is where we learn everything that's going on when it comes to Ulysses and his master plan alongside with Cleric. Because yes, this world is perfect, but here's the catch though. It has a core that has to be completely charged up every few years. And so what happens every few years? You have people from Dimension 4 go over to different planets across different dimensions as a way to collect a bunch of people from different worlds to bring them back here and basically use those people as a way to be energy to charge up the core. And so the 6 million people that had just left Earth to come over here believing they were coming here for a better world, a perfect world, just got tricked. Because now they're going to be used as a way to keep the energy going in the core of this world in Dimension 4. And you have Clark realize that this was not Ulysses' first time doing this, that him and Cleric have done this many times before, except now it's Earth, and Earth is the home world to Ulysses. And Clark can't believe that he would do this to his own race of people. Now, you didn't have Clark realize the parents of Ulysses is on the ship that brought all those 6 million people over to Dimension 4. And the thing is, that is why Ulysses did not want his parents to go in the first place, because he knew they were going to be used as a way to keep the core of this world alive. They would have died. But with Clark using his X-ray vision, he's all like, dude, your parents snuck on. They're on this ship, and sooner or later, they're going to be converted into energy for this core, for this entire world. And so this is Clark saying, we have to basically save your parents, but we also have to save the 6 million people that you took away from Earth, but also save the people of this world here in Dimension 4 as well. Because if what Ulysses is saying is true about the idea that this world is only alive because of its core, meaning that the core could die sooner or later, and if the core does die, that means this world dies with it, then we have to go ahead and get these folks off this world as well, to find them a new home or to find a way to fix the core so that it will not die off, killing off everybody on this planet. So you have Clark say, why not go ahead and use the same ship that brought all of us here to take all of us home, but also the people of this world home with us as well. And so you have our two heroes work together. Now, when they do work together, their main goal is to, at first, get the people of Earth back onto Earth, including Ulysses' parents. And so you have Ulysses and Superman begin the idea of using the transporters to basically get recharged to send those folks back home first. And once they're able to do that, then their next goal is to get the people of the great world from the Dimension 4 onto this ship, and then once again use the transporters to get those folks over to Earth next. But the thing is, while you have our two heroes trying to pull off the second part of their plan, they get stopped by Cleric. But here comes the big problem though, because Cleric does attack both Superman and Ulysses, which of course throw our two heroes off. But you have Cleric say the ship is now technically offline. And with that happening, the ship is going to fall into the core. Now, if that happens, it is going to permanently damage the core to the point where the core could basically explode. And so you have Clark grab Ulysses and you have our two heroes fly into space before the core can blow up. But when it does blow up, it destroys the entire planet of Dimension 4. Now, luckily for our heroes, they were able to get the people of Earth back onto Earth. But the people of the Great Fourth World, or the Great World, is now gone completely. They had died when that planet had exploded. And for Ulysses, he's very upset about the idea because now his adoptive world is gone. And technically for him, this was his home. He was raised here with those people, but now it's gone, completely wiped out. The entire world, the entire race, is all gone. Now he blames Superman for this, but at the same time, it's kind of like, you can't do that. But for Ulysses, no, it is Clark's fault that this world is gone. If Clark did not say anything at all and let Ulysses and Cleric use the 6 million people of Earth to charge at the core, this world right here would still be alive. But now you have Ulysses once again beating down on Clark Kent. And so as we jump into the next chapter, we actually do pick up with Ulysses beating down on Superman. Now, here's the thing though, because it's technically Ulysses saying it's your fault, and somewhat it is Superman's fault, because remember, Superman said, why in the world are you going to sacrifice 6 million people but not try to save both lives? The people of the great world, but also the people of Earth as well. And so it was Superman who did change the mind of Ulysses to kind of work with Superman to save both races. But at the same time, it didn't work out. And so the great world was destroyed. Now, yes, the people of Earth were able to get back to Earth. But the thing is though, other people died because of Clark not going with Ulysses' plan. Now, this is not me saying like, oh yeah, Ulysses is right. What I'm saying is, technically it is Superman's fault. But in reality, it's Clark saying you were going to sacrifice 6 million people to save this world right here. That is not okay. So both characters are really in the wrong here. But either way, you have Ulysses just beating down on Superman. But real quickly, we have to jump back over to the people of Earth, because at first they were on the great world. They were on this perfect world to only come back to Earth, a world that is clearly not perfect, but on top of that has a lot of issues. And so with that being said, they're kind of like, we were promised a world where my daughter who's very sick might have the chance to survive. Or, the idea of no longer being homeless, or the idea of having enough money to pay for food. Those different kinds of struggles were promised to them to no longer be around, but unfortunately, they're now back on Earth, and those problems are right back at them again. But getting back over to the battle between Superman and also, well, Ulysses, their battle goes all over the place. They do arrive back on Earth, and once they do, you have the people of Earth wondering what the heck happened between Superman and Ulysses. But you have Clark kind of give a speech in a way where it's kind of like, listen guys, I know you were promised to go to a world, a great world, a perfect world, but unfortunately that will not happen. But the thing is, as long as you have hope in this world right here, things can change. And then Homeboy goes right back to fighting Ulysses just like that. And so while you have our two characters fighting against each other, this is the moment where you have Superman do a solar flare. Now, this was the first time he was actually able to achieve this new power. Because remember, when it comes to Ulysses, he has the ability to manipulate energy. And so when you have Clark trying to use heat vision on Ulysses, technically it does not work in the way Clark was hoping it would work. But then Clark just keeps pushing and pushing his heat vision out. And while doing that, out of nowhere, his body begins to react in a new kind of way, with him trying to push beyond his actual limits, to the point where he releases a huge amount of energy, a solar flare energy. A huge explosion is done, and we're left to wonder what happened to Ulysses, because Homeboy got hit hard by this new power, but Clark is completely drained. Out of nowhere, someone grabs him and takes him somewhere else. And we kind of find out that he was saved by Batman. Now, once you have Batman being able to get Clark and take him back over to the Batcave, this is where we get all the information about the actual solar flare, this new power that Superman has unlocked. And this was a very important thing that led us into the actual truth arc when it came to Superman, because the solar flare plays a huge role in the idea of Superman losing his abilities in that arc after this one here. Either way, you have Batman say that what happened was Superman released a huge amount of energy, except while doing that, his cells are completely drained. And so without having any kind of solar energy in those cells, Superman is technically, well, human. And that is it. And so unfortunately, he cannot just fly or use his powers until his cells are completely recharged. Now, when it comes to Ulysses, he was found, but he was locked up in a special kind of cell that continues to drain his energy so that he is not able to break out of there anytime soon. But then you have Clark go over to, well, Ulysses' prison cell to try to talk to Ulysses. Unfortunately, though, when it comes to Ulysses, he does not want to talk to Clark at all, because to him, it's Clark's fault in the idea the great world is gone. It's his fault that his adoptive parents, his friends on that other world are all gone right now. It's his fault that he is locked up currently and unable to use his powers. And so he tells Superman, I do not want to talk to you at all. Please get the heck out of here. And Clark has no choice but to go ahead and walk away. But then you have Ulysses' parents appear. Now, when they do appear, they're trying to tell Ulysses, listen, Superman talked to us, but no matter what, we still love you. No matter what, you are still our son. No matter what, we know there's more to the story. And so this is kind of like putting Ulysses on the back burner for the time being. But then this leads into another big moment, because even though Ulysses is locked up, we're still not technically done with his story written by Geoff Johns, because right after that, you have Clark go pay a visit to Jimmy, and he realized that no matter what, Jimmy Olsen is the one person he can trust, like I said, no matter what, because Jimmy is such a great guy. He's always been in Clark's corner, but also Superman's corner. And so you have Clark say, Jimmy, I have a secret to tell you. I am Superman. And this is a huge moment for Clark and Jimmy in the new 52. But the last page of the third chapter really does focuses on Mr. Oz, where we kind of find out that he is still watching Clark Kent. But like I said earlier, we already know that Mr. Oz is, of course, well, Jor-El, the father, the biological father of Superman. But either way, we see him getting ready to send a package over to Clark Kent. But when we jump into the 4th chapter, well, we kind of find out that somebody is delivering the package for Mr. Oz to hopefully get over to Clark Kent. Now, for Jimmy, he's very excited about the idea of learning that his best friend, Clark Kent, is Superman. But here comes the problem, though, because with Superman being able to do the solar flare, he is technically powerless until his cells are recharged by the yellow sun. And so, unfortunately, he has no powers to show Jimmy to prove that he actually is Superman. And so, for Jimmy, it's more of, you're not Superman. You're faking it. You're lying to me. There's no way that you have powers. There's no way that you are the Man of Steel. You are basically lying to me right now. But you have Clark say, listen, let me go ahead and explain to you why I can't show you my powers right now. But on top of that, why my armor looks different. Because his Superman suit does look a tad bit different. Only because when he did the solar flare, he technically did destroy his last Kryptonian outfit. But really, this chapter is really going to be more of Clark Kent trying to explain to Jimmy how he's no longer the Man of Steel just for one day. That technically he is a human, but again, thanks to the solar flare. And so you have Clark really being hit hard when it comes to the idea of being a regular human. For example, right now in Metropolis, it's very cold. And so for Clark, he was never cold no matter what. But because he's technically powerless, Homeboy's kind of like, yo, it's a little chilly right now. And matter of fact, when it comes to Clark, he realized a young boy had climbed up a tree to get his kite. But unfortunately, the boy might fall out of the tree. And really, the boy does fall out of the tree, where you have Clark going out of his way to save the young boy. Now, Clark is able to do that, except he does scrape his arm and begin to bleed. And so because of that, it really shows that he lost his durability. Thanks to the solar flare taking all of his solar energy away, Clark Kent is literally just a regular human. Now you do have Jimmy and also Clark head over to the Daily Planet. Now when they do arrive at the Daily Planet, it's really more Clark being brought back into the actual place. Because remember, in the earlier parts of the New 52, Clark left the Daily Planet because of Morgan Edge, the actual owner of the company. But of course, Perry White, the editor-in-chief, said, nah, man, I need you to come back over to the Daily Planet. You were a great reporter for us. And so you have Clark being brought back in after writing that big piece on Ulysses. Now he does get a paper cut, another example that Clark Kent is now just a regular person until he is fully recharged with solar energy. Except that is the moment where you have somebody run into the office or the meeting room to tell everyone that there are a bunch of gunmen right now in Metropolis causing a lot of problems with police. And so, of course, you have Lois and Clark and Jimmy all rush down. But here's the thing. Clark is going down there and trying to be Superman to stop the actual gunmen from hurting innocent people. But the thing is, he's currently just a regular person. He did lose his powers. And so if he does get shot, there's a possibility that he could actually die. And so you do have Superman go down and try to be that hero. Now, of course, he realized that if he gets shot, he's basically dead. But when he does go in there, he tries to actually talk to the gunman like, hey, man, listen, you haven't hurt anybody yet. Why do you have a gun out for? Why are you trying to shoot people for? Like, hey, man, listen. Put the gun down. You still have a chance to make a better life choice here. You still have a chance to live your life. Now, this is Clark just trying his best to talk the guy out of making a huge mistake. But the thing is, Clark is actually able to do that because people of Metropolis trust Superman. This guy with a gun right here is not your usual thug, your usual bad guy. This was somebody who went through some struggles, most likely was also involved in the Ulysses event as well, and right now currently hitting some hard times. So having Superman being there and being able to calm him down, to talk him out of the idea of killing somebody, was a great moment. And so you have the gunman actually give up, hand the gun over to Clark, and everything is a-okay. Now, once you have Superman and Jimmy walk away from the scene, well, that is the moment you have Clark be able to fly once again. And of course, that tells Jimmy that what Clark said earlier is the truth, that Clark Kent is Superman. Now, the last page of this book is really more of Clark Kent and Jimmy Olsen going back over to the Daily Planet, and you have Clark get a package. Of course, it is the same package that Mr. Oz had technically sent over to Clark. And we come to find out it is a notebook. But this notebook is blank, completely blank. And for Mr. Oz, it's about the idea that the future is unwritten, meaning that Clark still has the ability to change his future. And this is the end for today's video. This wraps up the Superman the Men of Tomorrow storyline, which honestly, I kind of like it, but at the same time, it's not one of my favorite Superman stories of all time. But it's still a great story to read. So with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.